Hi, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Cassie Barker from Environmental Defense. Senator Odette sends her regards and her regrets. She's not unable to join today. Today I'm joined by firefighters, Northern Indigenous health experts, and environmentalists to discuss the dangers of PFAS, or forever chemicals. PFAS don't break down, they accumulate in our bodies. For years, these stain-proof and waterproof forever chemicals have been used in clothing, cookware, diapers, cosmetics. We absorb them through our skin, ingest it in our water and food contact materials, and inhale it in dust from products in our house. PFAS are making people sick. Cancers, kidney disease, and immune system harms are a few of the many diseases associated with this class of chemicals. Northern Indigenous people are particularly impacted by PFAS, and Lucy Gray will discuss the urgent need to act on this class of chemicals. Forever chemicals have been used in firefighting gear and foams, meaning firefighters are also highly exposed. You'll hear from firefighter Quincy Emmons on how PFAS are impacting firefighters. PFAS are contaminating our water, air, and soils. Larissa Holman will talk about the harms to water and aquatic ecosystems. Canada needs to do more to protect us from these harms. Other governments are taking action and getting PFAS out of their products. Many brands are going PFAS-free, but PFAS lobbyists are showing callous disregard for our health by continuing to stand in the way of necessary regulations. There should be no place for forever chemicals in any of our futures. Scientists want this government to follow through on its science-based approach and list the entire class of chemicals as toxic and strengthen proposed regulations to ban PFAS in products. Dr. Elaine MacDonald will tell us more about what this government can do to better protect our health and the environment. The longer we wait to phase out PFAS, the bigger this toxic legacy becomes. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Lucy Gray to discuss the impacts on Northern Indigenous people.
Nakut me Cassie. Lucy Gray from Kanyaksuk. I work as a public health Inuit research advisor for the Nunavik Regional Board of Health and Social Services. Research has shown that pregnant women in Nunavik are exposed and the exposure is increasing. Inuit children are born with PFAS already in their bodies, and they accumulate throughout their lifetime just by living in the Arctic and practicing their ancient lifestyle. While the PFAS industry does not provide any assurance to us, we are starting to find out some health concerns emerging from the research in Nunavik. The federal government has a fiduciary responsibility entrenched in the Constitution. It's duty-bound to protect the inherent rights and well-being of Inuit, and it has a responsibility to protect. And there is a strict standard of conduct in place. So the federal government needs to regulate PFAS because they do have a duty to protect and assist Inuit. So federal action is warranted. The onus is usually on the Inuit in Nunavik to prove that these chemicals have entered our homelands and our bodies. And research has proven that we have much higher levels than the Southern Canadian population. And as mentioned, our unborn children are born with PFAS already in their bodies. We don't see any benefits from these, but we are carrying a huge risk. Our health is being compromised, our traditional diet is being compromised, as well as our well-being and health. Our traditional diet is ancient. It's highly nutritious, it's cheaper than to import southern foods, and we have a right to practice food sovereignty, especially with the high food insecurity faced by the population in Nunavik, as well as for pregnant women, elders, and youth. And this shows in the high anemia present in our population. PFAS needs to be regulated for its entire class to protect our health and our source of food. Industry, as mentioned, has not proven to us that this is safe, but we are finding out the health risks. Every Canadian, including all Inuit, have a right to live in a toxic and hazardous chemical-free environment, and they have a right to eat their diet toxic-free, PFAS-free. So we haven't seen any benefits, we carry all the risk, and the industry should not have a free rein to dump these PFAS into the environment that make their way to the Arctic and stay there. So there are some health risks that we are concerned about. There's alternatives and substitutes available. The industry has to be held accountable, needs to be regulated. We should not be forced to make any risk-benefit analysis when it comes to eating our food. We are still saying to the population that despite the presence of PFAS, that to stop eating our traditional food is way more riskier, but we should not have to be forced to take that analysis. Our Aboriginal rights should never be compromised. We will never stop eating our traditional foods. We will never stop practicing our culture. Our way of life should not be compromised to benefit few corporations' quarterly reports. Processed food is difficult to transport, and it's very expensive. And as studies have also shown that an Inuit who practices their culture, eats their traditional diet, is much more healthier, physically, mentally, and socially, as well as spiritually. And we need to approach this as a collective. Inuit should never be treated like canaries in a mine, nor should they be treated like lab rats, and never as sacrificial lambs to benefit an industry or corporation. Every precautionary measure should be taken. Inuit have a right to eat their highly nutritious traditional foods free of PFAS, transported from faraway lands that may cause adverse health effects. We are finding out that the long-range environmental transport is compromising our health and our diet. The Arctic should not be treated as a chemical wastebasket, and the burden of proof should not be put on the Inuit shoulders, especially with the limited resources and the other problems that we face. But ultimately, we pay the price and shouldn't have to. So in the past, we have experienced high PCBs, and experience has shown us that with the Stockholm Convention, when these chemicals are banned, they have decreased over time. We are seeing PFAS increasing, and if it is banned and regulated, we hope in the future that it decreases. PFAS as a class needs to be treated as a class. And we should not have to play with the health of Inuit and take the word of the industry, which is profit-driven. Inuit should never be forced to endure any health risks, nor should any Canadian. This is not only an issue for the Arctic inhabitants, nor is it only a firefighter issue. This is a concern for every Canadian as a global citizen. We all have an obligation to protect our homeland. Nakukmi, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Quincy Emmons, and I've been a volunteer firefighter for 27 years. And about 12 years ago, I started looking into the firefighting foams in the fire service. And the more I researched, the more I was concerned with the products being used. Limited information at that time, unfortunately, left many with assumptions that firefighting foams were safe. Buzzwords like biodegradable and green do not properly explain if a product is safe. Many things are biodegradable if you allow enough time for them to break down, and green is a color and not a confirmation that something is safe. PFAS and forever chemicals need to be banned as a class because, to be honest, the industry cannot help itself as there is a long history of substituting different toxic chemicals for another. Some firefighting foams are labeled as fluorine-free, can still contain PFAS, and a 2020 National Research Council of Canada report states toxicity concerns with the new fluorine-free foams compared to previous generations. If you need a reason to ban these chemicals as a class, simply ask a firefighter if they have lost a colleague, a friend, or even a family member to a firefighting-related cancer, and I'm sure you'll be shocked at just how many have. Every day, brave men and women put their lives on the line to protect their community. And now is the time that we take a stand and protect them. Thank you.
PFAS contamination has emerged as a significant environmental and public health issue, given that these chemicals do not break down in the environment and can bioaccumulate in fish and wildlife. Ottawa Riverkeeper believes it is important to take immediate action to mitigate the potential long-term consequences that these persistent chemicals may have on aquatic ecosystems and the people who depend on them. Based on our experience of working within the complex multi-jurisdictional space and watershed of the Ottawa River, we believe that the federal government needs to ensure that adequate protections are put in place and ask that there is consideration on how to best do so. As a member of the International Waterkeeper Alliance, we see that the work being done in the U.S., including the recent introduction of the PFAS Accountability Act, is a positive step towards freshwater protection. Canada must adopt a proactive and precautionary approach to addressing PFAS as a class of chemicals which are toxic to the environment and whose bioaccumulation in the food chain directly impacts the health and survival of wildlife, compromising the biodiversity essential to the planet's ecological balance. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Elaine MacDonald, and I am the Program Director for the Healthy Communities Program at Ecojustice Canada, Canada's largest environmental law charity, and we're working closely with Environmental Defence on the issues of regulating PFAS. I just have a few quick closing remarks. Although the market is already moving to safer substitution, we cannot rely on companies to make these changes voluntarily. Federal regulation is the only way to drive meaningful change. The government must not be fooled by industry lobbying. They are trying to narrow the definition of the PFAS class to avoid regulation and protect their financial interests. Pretending that some PFAS don't exist won't make them go away. The definition of PFAS is science-based, and over 200 of the world's leading scientists with expertise in PFAS chemistry has stated in a recent open letter. The longer we wait to act on PFAS, the bigger the toxic legacy will grow. We want this government to list the entire class of PFAS as toxic under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act and strengthen regulatory action to ban PFAS in products. Thank you very much. Cassie, did you have closing?
Any questions?
Can you just outline what there are some current regulations that are in effect, and what you'd exactly like to see the government do, or how much further you want them to go?
There's limited regulations with respect to just a handful of PFAS. The class itself is thousands of chemicals. Some say over 10,000. The assessment the government did looked at about 4,600. So there's limited restrictions with respect to PFOS and PFOA and things like firefighting foam. There's some limitations around a few long chain PFASs, but really, like for the most part, I think it's fair to say that this class of chemicals is largely unregulated.
We're at a moment where we could see a significant improvement in how this government deals with PFAS, and we know that industry is doing everything they can to undermine that action. So this is a moment when we could get comprehensive listing and regulation if the government is willing to move quickly. So this is the time, and we really hope that the voices of firefighters and impacted people can help to push this one over the line.
And maybe just for Lucy, if you could tell me, I have some idea, but why is it that northern people are being exposed to such a high level of PFAS? Is it because of imported products and things
No,
like that?
it's all from faraway lands. So what happens with PFAS is that it's transported to the Arctic long range. So when it gets to the Arctic, and because it's so cold, it stays there. So once it stays there, it'll go into the food chain, and it bioaccumulates in our bodies just by simply practicing our traditional lifestyle and our traditional diet. So this is what's and it's even higher amongst Inuit, even compared to people living in hot spots. So it is entering into the Arctic, staying in the Arctic, and because we eat our diet that are also eating these things, it's accumulating in our bodies.
We also have some questions online for the other journalists. Now is the time to use your raise hand function. We have the first question from Xiaoli. Give me 1 second.
Hello,
Xiao, you should be.
thanks, Jen. I'm not sure who would take this, but does anyone have any concerns about the efficacy of a class-wide ban, as you're calling for, given the recent judgment that overturned the single-use plastics ban?
So what's so key to understand about the way SEPA works is that listing is just a door into the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. So listing the entire class just ensures that the government then can go ahead and regulate PFAS, and they have flexibility with respect to how they can regulate within that class once it's listed. So while there's maybe some concern with the plastics decision, of course that is being appealed. This decision has been stayed, for people that don't know that, by the Federal Court of Appeal. We are hopeful the Federal Court of Appeal will have something to say about that decision, and maybe it'll be overturned if we're lucky. There's definitely some concerns with that decision, but I think, just to kind of summarize, like, the purpose of listing is not the same as regulating. Get it listed under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. That's the step the government needs to see through right now. Then they can address how to best manage the risk of the various PFAS substances within that class.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, perhaps for Ottawa Riverkeeper, could you speak a bit? We heard quite a bit about the harms being done to Indigenous people of the North Inuit people, but could you speak a bit about some of the harms being done to city dwellers, perhaps in the Ottawa watershed?
Sure. So the thing about PFAS is that once it enters into the environment, it's there. And so whether it enters through fire foam into the soils and then through runoff water into the freshwater environment, it's present and it starts to bioaccumulate in various aquatic species. What I can do to assure people about the drinking water in Ottawa and Gatineau is that they have really excellent drinking water facilities that test for a number of different contaminants, and I'm sure that there will be the appropriate steps needed to be taken if PFAS is present in the drinking water source. But right now, we do know that it is present in parts of the watershed, and the bigger concern for Ottawa Riverkeeper in terms of protecting aquatic health is protecting those source waters. So the same water that we get our drinking water from is the same water that is habitat for aquatic species such as fish, that people come to the Ottawa River from all over the country and the continent to fish, and we want to make sure that those species are protected as well.
Thank you. Next question, Mark Fawcett Atkinson.
Hello.
Hello, Mark. We can hear you. You can proceed with your question. Mark, could you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. That worked. How do we stack up internationally on regulating PFAS?
I've been involved. We're trying to, well, the thing is, Canada nominated PFAS to be banned at the international level at the Stockholm Convention. So we've participated in the Stockholm Convention, and we are hoping that it will be banned, where the next session for pop rock will be on what the exemptions are going to be. So internationally, there is work being done. So in ahead of that, Canada needs to regulate this as a class. Look at me.
I'll add that the EU has identified a roadmap for phasing PFAS out of their products and have prioritized those substances where there are known safer substitutions for PFAS. Brands are also moving away from using PFAS in their products. Insurers are no longer insuring companies that use PFAS and produce it. And 4 out of 5 Canadians are supportive of strong federal action to regulate this substance. So the world is moving, and Canada is primed to follow suit, and we're really hopeful that we'll see a solid announcement on progress shortly.
Awesome, thank you. One follow-up is, which industry groups or companies specifically are kind of leading the charge on pushing back against regulation?
There are several associations, industry associations, who have claimed that their use of PFAS in their products and applications is essential. However, given the transition of the broader market towards alternatives that move away from PFAS, we would hope that the associations would look to their brands and the progress that those brands are making to phase these substances out of their production. This is a moment of needed action, and we shouldn't have denial of the impacts of these substances and delay tactics applied to seeing urgent action and regulatory tools coming forward.
Thank you, Mark. Next question, Toby Otak. Toby, you are unmuted if you can hear us. Toby, are you here with us? Going once? Going twice? Okay, that concludes our press conference today. Thank you, everybody.